We shall begin with where we left in the previous session. So we had already done the school of psychoanalysis, right? Okay, it's starting again from the beginning. So, is there any doubt in the previous session? Anything you might want to ask? Any clarity? Or was it all clear?
No, everything is clear.
Okay, we'll move a little faster today, okay, and we'll try to cover up as much as possible. So, yes, we did the school of psychoanalysis, which was given by Sigmund Freud, and then we came to the behavioral model. What we are discussing over here is that we're not exactly discussing the schools of psychology, rather, we are discussing which approaches, what were the approaches that were given due to which abnormal behavior occurs. Okay, so every school of psychology they give a different reasoning as to why abnormal behavior occurs. Okay, so psychoanalysis said that it could be due to the interaction of various forces in an individual's body. We discussed the other day id, ego, and
Ma'am,
superego.
you're not audible.
I am not audible. Is my voice breaking?
No, ma'am, you are audible for me.
Ma'am, for me it's not clear. I think it's a
Okay,
problem with my
maybe it's your.
network issue. Yeah, it's okay.
Yes, probably. Okay. So, yes, the other day we discussed that it could be because of the conflicts between id, ego, and superego, and that is why, when those conflicts remain unresolved, the person faces some or the other abnormality in the behavior. Now, behavioral model, what they say is they say that every behavior is learned. So, even the behavior that they talk about is, it is only the observable behavior and not the unobservable behavior. Okay, so they said that whatever a person does, or whatever you see, everything is learned. All right. uh, can you give me a minute? I'll just go to the model. And they say that every behavior is learned. Everything that for them, behavior is anything that you can see. So according to them, there were three major people who worked in behavioral model. You might have even heard of them. Ivan Pavlov, he talked about classical conditioning. Okay, so he has a very famous experiment on dogs. Okay, so he was a physician. He was not a psychologist, and he did this experiment. I'll not go into very much detail of the experiment, otherwise we'll not be able to start with disorders. So I'll just give you a brief. So he said that if there are two events, that occur together. So he's talking about the temporal association. That means association of time between two events. For example, um, okay, temporal association of two things. So what he did was, he tried to make association between food and saliva. Okay, he said that whenever we see food, and a person is hungry, what happens is that person salivates. So right now, if I ask you all to imagine of your favorite food, okay, it could be your favorite ice cream or anything, and right now you all have eaten food, but anyways, if you're hungry and you'll try to think about that food, food will, thinking about that food will make you salivate. Your mouth would become watery. So Pavlov conducted an experiment on dogs, and he realized that whenever a dog eats food, like humans, he also salivates. But sometimes, even before the food has already arrived, the dog started, just by realizing that the food is about to come, and the food hasn't come yet, the dog used to start salivating. Okay, so he said that when two things are close together in time, that can make us perform in a certain manner. Another example of this could be that um, there could be certain examples. Can you guys think of any example? For example, when you walk into a room full of darkness, you are conditioned to switch on the lights, because that's something that you do unconsciously, but since there has been so many repetitions of that behavior that you don't even realize that you're doing certain behaviors. Okay, so he says that when two things, they are very close together and they keep on happening repeatedly, they become a part of our behavior. Are you guys able to make sense?
Yes,
Are you
ma'am.
able to understand what
Ma'am,
I'm
actually,
trying to
you
say?
missed
Yes.
one point.
Yeah, tell me.
Ma'am, actually, in the experiment, there was a ring bell. So when the dog is to listen the
Yes,
ring
there
bell,
was
he
a
is.
bell. I did not.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. I did not go into very much detail of the experiment. Yes, but you're correct. So okay. Shall I explain the complete experiment now?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So earlier only food used to, produce saliva. So he realized that the food was not necessary. Only the indication of, food could produce saliva. So then he used bell. In the second order conditioning, he also used light. But for +2 students, it is not necessary. So I'll not go into the details. But yes, thank you, Rahul, for mentioning. Okay. So that was classical conditioning. And then comes the operant conditioning. So operant conditioning, it operates, the word operant, or the word instrumental, it is also called instrumental conditioning. This was given by B.F. Skinner. Instrumental is the word, from the word instrument. So instruments, like just like musical instruments. So the words themselves are very much clear what we are trying to say here. So here, when I say that something is being conditioned, so in classical conditioning is called classical because it was something that came in the beginning. It is classical. We say that classical movies because they were of the earlier times. So classical conditioning pehle aayi thi. That is it. Why it is called classical. Okay. And in classical conditioning, there was no role of the person whom we are conditioning. Okay. So it's not necessary कि dog कुछ करे, सब कुछ हम खुद ही करेंगे तब भी things would work very well. But in instrumental conditioning, we will make our subject perform some action or operate on something or work as an instrument in a certain thing, work as an instrument or operate on a certain thing, and that is how he will get conditioned for the same. So so here, majorly when when the person performs any certain action, he has to operate or act as an instrument. He has to perform some or the other activity. Okay, it could be press the lever or ring the bell or anything like that. Was anyone speaking anything? Okay, I'll continue. So it could be any of these things. Now here, what the major thing is rewards and punishments. So in childhood we used to do many things, and for, our parents used to say that if you score good marks, I'll buy you a bicycle, or I'll get you chocolates, or if you score full marks in the test, I'll get you this or I'll get you that. At the same time, if you used to perform any wrong action, they would scold you, or they would threaten you by saying that you would be punished, or they would actually punish you. So that way you used to get conditioned ki if I perform this action, I'll get a reward, and if I perform this action, I may get punished. So certainly the behaviors for which you were getting rewards, you used to start performing more of those behaviors rather than the behaviors for which you get punished, right? So this is operant conditioning, which says that behavior is the result of reward or punishment. Classical conditioning said that only if there is a temporal association. The word temporal means time. Two things which just like two things which are associated because of time. So they are happening so closely that we say that they are becoming a part of our behavior. Okay, so that was classical conditioning, which talks about temporal association on the basis of time. Operant or
Hello,
instrumental conditioning.
hello, ma'am.
Am I?
That
Yes.
example of dog and bill, that will be example of operant conditioning, right?
No, that would be an example of classical conditioning.
But in classical condition, but you
The
said that
dog is not ringing the bell.
I'm getting confused in that, because there is a operand that is a bill. That's why I think that is a example of
Mhm.
operand conditioning.
Okay, I'll make things more clear for you. We'll go slow. Okay,
Okay.
let me explain you once again. So, classical conditioning. Okay, when I say classical conditioning, so dog has to do nothing. Dog आराम से अपने chamber में बैठा है. Dog is sitting in his chamber. There is a certain time at which the person who comes to give him food will come, and he gives him that food. So dog realizes, say, at 4 p.m. every day he gets food. So when he sees food, it is natural that he's hungry, and when he sees food, his mouth starts salivating. So after a few trials in the similar manner, you know, uh, even before the food has come in front of him, he'll start salivating, right? So even before the appearance of food. So Pavlov, he conducted an experiment. He thought of an experiment, and what he did was, every time before presenting the food, he started ringing the bell. Who started ringing the bell? Pavlov, the person who was conducting this experiment. But Abhibi, the dog, is not doing anything. The dog has no role to play. He's salivating, which is a natural response, and it is not something that he's doing, on his own. तो उसको कोई एफर्ट नहीं करना पड़ रहा है. Whether or not the dog salivates, the food is going to be presented. The dog has to do nothing at all. The bell is also being presented by the experimenter. Okay. Sorry. So later on he realized that even without food, when the bell was presented after several trials, just on the presentation of the bell, the dog started salivating. This is classical experiment, classical conditioning's experiment. Whereas in operant conditioning, what happens is, in operant conditioning, he used rats. So this is my little rat. And for rat to I think he used cats, I guess. So
No, that is
whatever.
rat.
Rat. Okay.
Yes, and there is partition. I think that is example, right?
Okay,
Partition
probably.
in between
Okay,
that
let us
box.
take any animal. Yes, we study so many experiments in masters that we get confused.
Ma'am,
Okay,
it was rat.
so any example. It was rat. Okay, thank you so much. So now for rat to get a food palette, there is also an experiment of I think cat also. So let us do this experiment only. So this is operant conditioning. Earlier what I told you was classical conditioning. Now here, for rat to come get the food palette, now the rat is hungry and he wants food. It is not like that at any time the rat would there is no certain time at which rat would get food. Okay, to get the food he has to do some certain action. Say there is a bell or a buzzer in the chamber, and rat has to press that buzzer or that lever, and only then he will get the food palette. Now the difference between classical and operant conditioning is that in classical conditioning, did the dog had to do anything at all? Was he supposed
No,
to press any lever, press any bell to get the food?
no,
No,
no.
right? And whatever response he was giving was innate response. The response that he was giving, he was salivating, right? So that salivation is a natural response. It is not a response that we have created on our own. Okay, so it was involuntary natural response. Whereas in operant conditioning, he's acting as an operator, he's acting as an instrument in the conditioning. Agar wo liver press karega hi nahi, will he get food?
No.
No, he will not get food. So here he is acting as an instrument or as an operator. This is the difference between classical and operant conditioning. And here, if you see, even the response is voluntary. If he feels hungry, he can get the food. If he can press the lever and get food. If he does not feel hungry, he need not press the lever. So everything is being operated by the rat himself, entirely upon the rat. We have just made the rules of the game, but it is the rat who is the player. Whereas in classical conditioning, we have decided the rules. We are doing everything, and the dog is, he's relaxing in his chamber. He does not have to do anything at all in classical conditioning. Now, did I make myself clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any doubts now?
No.
Ma'am, what are the
Okay,
key
perfect.
points in classical conditioning and operant conditioning?
Pardon?
What are the key points? Like, what are the key points that we can write down for classical conditioning and operant conditioning?
That is operator.
You will not get classical. Yes, you will
Hmm?
not get classical and operant conditioning in this much of detail in your exam. So it is just one line that is mentioned in your NCRT book. Still, the points
Okay.
that I have told you, that classical conditioning was given by Pavlov and operant was given by Skinner. Even this is also not mentioned in your NCRT books. Still, for your knowledge, I am explaining you everything extra. So you will not get it in that much of detail. Still, who gave this experiment, and what were the major differences? Like in one of them, the response was voluntary, while in the other one,
Hmm.
the response was involuntary. And in one of them, the subject had to perform a certain action. In the other one, he did not have to. Right? These are the
Oh,
major differences that you need to mention.
okay.
Okay, I got disconnected. Am I audible now? I've changed my network.
Yeah, yeah, audible.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So yes, yeah, these are the only key points that you need to mention, nothing more than that. You will rather get a question on what are the factors that influence the abnormal behavior, and in that you will be supposed to write all of these models. So you don't need to explain classical and operant conditioning in that much of detail. Okay, you'll be doing it in detail in your bachelor's and master's.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So next is the cognitive model. We all have heard of, CBT, cognitive behavioral model. So do you know what the word cognitive stands for?
Our thinking patterns.
Yes. Thinking, problem solving, all these things, they all come under cognition. So anything that is related to our, pattern of thoughts or something like that. So now, what does sorry, I missed in behavioral model, we also have social learning. Social learning was given by Albert Bandura. Okay, so he says that we learn behavior by imitating others, by copying what other people do. Okay, so social learning, man is a social animal. He lives in society, and whatever he behaves, all of it he has seen, he has seen other people behaving in a certain way in the society, and he copies that behavior, and that is how he learns that behavior. That's what social learning theory by Bandura says. Okay, so 3 models even in behavioral: classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and social learning. Now, cognitive, as we just talked about, cognition means thinking or problem solving. So, how do these people, tell that? How does a person start behaving abnormally? So, thinking. They said that there is some faulty thinking. There is some problem with the way a person thinks. So, maybe the way he thinks is irrational. So, I'll tell you what irrational is. The word rational means to reason. Okay, so yes, and when you start doing things without any reason and without thinking logically, that means you are behaving irrationally, without any reason, without any logic. That's irrational. When you're thinking, your beliefs, they become irrational. You start behaving not so logically, and that leads to abnormal behavior. That also leads to many other difficulties in life. So that is why CBT is very popular, therapeutic technique that is used all across the world. So yes, this is what this is. So people start taking up decisions based entirely on the basis of their feelings or emotions, or they start without thinking anything at all. They become like the dog in the chamber, that they just get conditioned to certain things, due to which many problems they start happening, they start occurring in their lives, and then they feel that they are trapped. They feel trapped and they find it difficult to come out of that trap. And that is what that is how cognitive model explains this thing. Okay. um, when you study CBT in detail, you learn about various cognitive distortions, right? And you also study about this ABC model. Okay, so the ABC model is that what you A is for affect, B is for behavior, C is for consequences. So your affect, your feelings, they give rise to behavior, and that behavior, it gives rise to consequences. So you change any one of these things, you either change A or you change B, you can change C. So if you change the way you think or feel, or the way you behave, you can change the outputs that you get. Okay, so say that a friend of yours does not score well in his exams, and he always keeps saying that it is my teacher who does not want me to pass, and that's why she gives me less marks intentionally. So so there is a certain way that person feels. That's his affect. He thinks and feels that it is his teacher who is envious of him, or the teacher doesn't like him due to some or the other reason. That's why the way he behaves is कि मैं तो जितनी भी मर्जी मेहनत कर लूं, I will not pass. However hard I may work, the teacher will not give me sufficient marks to pass the exam. That's how he behaves. The consequence is that he always ends up scoring less, or he always ends up uh, not passing the exam. So now, what do you think? If he changes, can his this consequence be changed? Can he ever pass the exam or top the exam? Is
Yes,
there any way? Yes, tell me.
by changing his thinking process.
Yes, by changing his thinking process is one. If he stops thinking that the teacher is not envious of him, probably there is some other reason. Maybe I am not working so hard. When he'll change his thinking pattern, it will automatically lead to a change in his behavior, isn't it? He either changes his thinking, and his thinking will definitely change his behavior. He will probably start working harder, right? So when he starts working harder, obviously he will some or the other days start scoring better. This is a very lame example that I have given you. There are so many n number of instances that uh, you as a counselor would see. people being trapped in their own thoughts, and they would come up with such big problems, such big issues that according to them are really big, but they're all just trapped in this cognitive distortions. And once they come out of it gradually through CBT, CBT can make wonders in their lives. Okay, does that make sense? Cognitive model,
Yeah.
irrational beliefs, thinking, all those things. Overthinking, that we do, that's also a cognitive thing that we do. And I'm not saying that it is an abnormal thing to do, but again, if a little bit of overthinking can start making you behave in a negative manner, so imagine the people who are actually going through some abnormal issues, how would it impact them? Okay, the next one is a very nice model, humanistic and existential model. The word itself, suggests what, the word itself suggests its meaning. Humanistic model. Humanistic from the word human beings. So when I say humanistic model, it means that, they believe that we all should behave humanly and not inhumanly. We say that, that was such an, the humane thing to do. Humane thing to do means इंसानियत के तौर पे इंसान. So humanistic model, it says that all human beings, they're friendly, they're cooperative, they're very nice beings, and they all want to do things that are nice for themselves as well as for others. you know just the way that we say every behavior has a cause. तो अगर किसी ने कोई चीज करी होगी, it is that person must have some or the other reason behind it, irrespective of the fact whether it was a very nice thing to do, or even if it was a very bad thing to do, good or bad. Even if a person killed somebody, or so everything has a reason behind it. And according to humanistic model, every human being is a good human being. He wants to do good things, and he wants to reach to he just wants to do good things, and whatever he does has a good reason, good intention behind the same. That's what humanistic model says. So two very major contributors in humanistic school of psychology were Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. Maslow also gave his need hierarchy model, which you may study in your bachelor's. So yes, this is what humanistic school of psychology says. They say that every human being, he wants to actualize his full potential. Okay, and at the same time, the existential school of psychology, this school says that from birth we have total freedom to give meaning to our existence. So it says that we exist in this world, and we all are trying to find a meaning to our existence. So we all are trying to find that, we all are trying to make impact in the society. We all are trying to find meanings as to why we exist, and we want to create an impact. And we all want to avoid the empty lives or inauthentic life or dysfunctional life. That's what human, so they come up with a very positive approach. While psychodynamic approach, it said that everything, it lies in your unconscious, right? So there are so many conflicts between your id ego and super ego, due to which you start behaving abnormally. Behavioral model says that probably there were some wrong associations that were formed through classical conditioning or through operant conditioning, or maybe you must have heard of psychopaths. Now, so maybe in society you saw someone who did not behave, who due to which you started imitating that behavior. So maybe a child in his childhood, he saw somebody stealing something, and that's something that he learned, and later on he progressed in that thing, and that's how he became a thief or a very big criminal or something like that. That's what behavioral model suggests. Everything, it surrounds in how you learned your behavior. Jabki unconscious explains it in which manner, that you want something, there is some right thing to do, and then there is a referee who is there, and you all keep fighting in your mind, and due to which The behavior that is expressed outside is completely abnormal. Then the third one is cognitive model. It says that you make so much of mess of thoughts in your head which do not have any logic or any connection, due to which you start behaving in a certain manner. Okay, so that expresses in your behavior. And the fourth one is humanistic existential model, which says that everything that a human being is doing has some good intention, some good purpose, some humanly thing to do, due to which that person is behaving in a certain manner. And every human being wants to, give meaning to his existence on the world. He does not want to leave the world empty handed, and he wants to create some difference, due to which he is behaving in the manner he or she is. Okay, does that make sense? All four models? Any doubts? Anything you want me to repeat?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Others, is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. So I think we
Yes,
should.
ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Next model is socio-cultural model. So when I was saying that आपको exam में question आएगा factors underlying abnormal behavior, they could also ask you what are the biological factors underlying abnormal behavior, psychological factors, or maybe just socio-cultural factors. Or they could, directly ask you for 5 marks, what are the factors underlying abnormal behavior. So I have explained everything to you in very much depth, more depth than there is in NCERT. So you should not face any problem in attempting any question. But again, वो आपको इतना भी डिटेल में नहीं पूछेंगे कि something that is not of your level and you have to explain it. So you will not get a 5-mark question on psychodynamic model or humanistic existential model, unless or until it is given in NCERT. Still I am covering things in a greater depth कि थोड़ा सा अगर वो इधर उधर पूछ भी लेते हैं, so you should know the names of the things or people. Okay, so first one we did biological factors, then we did psychological factors. Now we are going to do the socio-cultural model. So what do you understand by the term socio-cultural?
Something which is related with society.
Yes, very good. And socio is
Something
related with
that
society.
believes in something
Oh.
that believes in societal norms,
Mm-hmm.
like the belief of a particular culture, the belief.
Yes, correct. So socio is for society, cultural is for culture. So now this model will obviously it will talk about, there are certain norms of the society or the culture that you live in. And when you deviate from those norms and of society and culture, the society starts saying that you are behaving abnormal. Because what society says is normal, you are not walking on the same footsteps. Right? So who comes in your society and culture? Your family or the neighborhood or your peer groups, the school that you go to, all these things, your social network. Nowadays, even your social media network, who are you connected to with Facebook, Instagram. This is not mentioned in your NCERT, but I'm telling you that when you talk about socio-cultural model, even these social media networks are a part of it now, right? So what social conditions are you living in? So as you start moving geographically, you would see that society, it keeps changing. So the kind of people you'll find in a certain part of the world, say in Africa is so much different to China or America. And China or America could be, or even Africa, they could be so much different from India. So every society has different norms, they have different cultures. This example I've given you on a bigger scale. Even in your own state, if you move from a village to a city, even then you would see that there are different cultures. Even in the families, even the families, they vary from one to another. There are India, you would see that there are people of every religion, every caste, every color, creed, everybody living in the same all this one geographical area. So every society or culture has different norms or conditions. So now when does abnormal behavior occur? I've not taught schizophrenia to all of you, but do you guys have an idea about schizophrenia?
When the person
Mhm.
I think
Okay, we'll take up this example once I've taught that to you, and then I'll give you this example again. I'm sure I'll give because I can't resist giving examples. So we'll discuss this once we have learned it. So now, in socio-cultural model, now when does a person starts behaving abnormally, or yeah, what could lead to an abnormal behavior? Sudden changes in the society. Now suddenly the pandemic came and everybody went online, or so many changes that started coming in people. There are so many people who, because they had to isolate themselves in the houses, they started having disorders, anxiety, depression, or all those cases. And we all have heard of one or the other case, at least one case. I think everybody would have heard people who started this awareness of mental health. It started rising during the pandemic. Everybody, even in campus, I was listening the other day, some party, there were elections in Chennai in last week, and the parties, they also included the concept of mental health in their campaigns, which was a nice thing to hear. So the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, it was a change in the society, and this change, it it impacted people's health in positive as well as negative ways. And we I have heard of many cases during the pandemic. There were so many helplines also issues. So yes, changes in the society. Then group prejudice or discrimination. Earlier, even the people, uh, same gender marriages, they were not considered normal. Now we have started accepting, right? Earlier, even those people were considered abnormal. So group prejudice or discrimination is something that could be termed abnormal, or maybe due to some economic problems or unemployment. These could also give birth to some or the other abnormal issue. It could be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be anything. Okay. And then rapid social change I've already covered. Then war or violence. So these alpha beta tests of intelligence, they were created during the times of world war. So even if there is a war, even that could lead to abnormal behavior. These are the socio-cultural factors that may lead to abnormal behavior. Okay. And then we also discuss about families. I told you family is also part of abnormal behavior, socio-cultural environment. So here, in family, if the parent is making the child too much dependent on themselves, or if the parents are careless, do you think that child will grow independently, mentally or physically? If the parents are supporting the child in each and everything, or they are not supporting the child at all. Are you all here?
No.
No, the child will not grow independently, or maybe he'll not realize his full complete growth, right? Or maybe when a person is isolated, that is also something that leads to some or the other mental illness. Isolation, not being a part of society, is also something that can lead to some or the other mental illness. So being a part of society, being a part of a society that is not very cooperative, or which has prejudices or discrimination in it, or maybe a society which is going through some changes, a society in which there is war or violence, or family or peer group which is not good. We hear so many, if you get a chance to intern in a drug de-addiction center, you would see that so many of them, they just claim that it was their peer group due to which they started having or started getting into addiction in the first place. Even the peer groups, they are also part of socio-cultural model. They're not biological or psychological, they're socio-cultural. And these factors also play a very significant role, right? Does that make sense? Were you guys able to relate? Or did you get really bored and I should be a little quick?
No.
You didn't get bored?
No, ma'am.
Okay, all right. So is that clear? Any doubts still here?
No.
Okay. Next is a very important and very interesting topic. I think many of you would be studying this for the first time. If yeah. So diathesis stress model. Okay. So we have done a complete chapter on stress. We studied it for like 4 to 5 hours, and we have discussed stress in a good depth. So diathesis stress model, what does this say? And this is also one of the factors how you could be predisposed to abnormal psychology, abnormal disorder, some abnormality. So this says that probably I'll first explain you the meaning of diathesis and stress. So diathesis means some biological predisposition to the disorder. I have already explained in a good depth, biological factors. I told you about genetics. I told you about, some dysfunction in the brain, and, maybe your parents or somebody in your family was already going through some disorder which is being passed on. So diathesis stress model, diathesis means that there is a biological predisposition to a certain disorder. तो शायद किसी की फैमिली में वो चीज ऑलरेडी है, or maybe there is a genetic predisposition, or there is a childhood trauma. This is condition number 1. There are 3 steps and I'm going to tell you all 3 of them. This is step 1. There is presence of some biological aberration. Number 1. Number 2, now that person already has that thing in his, I'll give you the example which I already gave you the other day, right? Diabetes. So, in your family, say your mother already is diabetic. Now, my mother is diabetic. And now, if I am, the first condition is fulfilled of diathesis stress model, you have some genetic predisposition, some biological predisposition to, to a mental disorder. Second is the vulnerability to mental disorder. What are the risk factors involved? Is it the first, do I have a first order relation with my parent? Or is it a second order relation? Is it that my grandmother had it? Okay. Or is it my mother? And do I have some siblings? So similarly, there is some vulnerability to the mental disorder. What is the risk factor involved? Okay. So if I have a sweet tooth, there is a huge, vulnerability. Or maybe if, I am obviously in a Punjabi environment where we all are very much foodies. So, and if my lifestyle is also the same, that I just have to sit all day and I have to teach students, it makes me more vulnerable to disorder. It increases my risk factor, isn't it? On the other hand, probably if I am somebody who is living in Mumbai where, most of the people are very health conscious, my risk factor, my vulnerability may or may not be that much. Is that making sense? The first thing I told you is that there is already a genetic predisposition or a biological, aberration. Something is already there. So I gave you an example of diabetes, that probably my parent or my grandparent, somebody is in my family is diabetic already. Condition number 1. Second condition is what is my vulnerability to get that disorder? What are the risk factors involved? Okay. So if those risk factors are high, there are high chances that I will, get diabetic. And if those risk factors are low, there are low chances that I get diabetic. If I eat a lot of sweets every day and I do not exercise at all, and my lifestyle is very, very, okay, I'm missing that word, but I'm just sitting idle all day, and yes, there is no activity involved at all in my lifestyle, maybe I am more vulnerable to the disorder, to diabetes. I'm talking specifically about diabetes. On the other hand, say I have belong to a family where everybody has gotten very much health conscious. We don't eat a lot of sweets or anything like that, and I exercise daily. Even the job that I do, it requires some or the other physical work. Will my risk factor be high or low? Type it in the chat box. Don't speak, okay? I want to know if you guys are actually hearing or sleeping in the class.
High.
Okay. What about others? It would be high.
Yes, high.
My risk factor would be high if I exercise daily
No, you said
and
you
I
will.
eat less. Huh?
Ma'am, you said like you will not exercise daily.
No, I asked you that if I'm exercising daily, I'm doing a job which requires mandatory physical activity and I don't eat a lot of sweets every day. Will my risk factor be high or low?
It will be low.
Low.
Are you all even listening or are you getting bored with this topic? Tell me honestly.
Yes,
You're
ma'am, we are
listening.
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 You are able to understand, make sense?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So first factor that I talked about was
Genetic.
genetics. Second is
Vulnerability.
Vulnerability.
this is a very, very important topic in terms of your entrance as well as in terms of your NCRT 11th and 12th, board exam. That's why I'm stressing on this and I'm taking a lot of time to explain this topic. Okay. So, yes. The third factor is presence of a pathogenic stressor. Now, this is a diathesis stress model and it is not a diathesis model, right? So now if there is, now you see the diagram. So if here, genetic predisposition, this is first condition, this is second condition. If there are less stressful circumstances, third factor is the stress, the kind of stresses that you would, come across. Factors that may lead to psychopathology. So when we studied stress, we studied about various disorders which are directly linked to stress. So if a person has high stress, that person is more or less vulnerable towards getting a certain disorder. Okay, so if the has minimal stressful circumstances and less vulnerability to the disorder, and though genetic predisposition is there is a low probability of getting the mental disorder. On the other hand, if that person who has high genetic predisposition, high vulnerability, high risk factor, you know the kind of lifestyle that person is living in, and he is under extreme stress and he does not know good coping strategies towards that stress, that person is very much likely to get that mental disorder. Okay, I am scared now. We all have, and the kind of lifestyle these days is, yes, it's not very good. So, did you guys understand? It is diathesis stress model. The name itself suggests what it wants to say. Diathesis is your predisposition towards a certain disorder. Then the second thing is the risk factors involved. Third thing is stress. Now, what kind of psychopathology this can lead to? In stress, we studied about CHD and things like that, coronary heart disease, or other things like that. Here, I'm talking about the abnormal disorders that that person can go through. Those are anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia, majorly, which are mentioned in your NCRT book. It could be other psychopathology factors also. Okay. So, in psychological terms, if somebody's parent has, issue of anxiety, and that person is living in an environment where the risk factors are very high and so is his lifestyle, and that person does not have good coping strategies to deal with excessive stress, that person can he or she has a high probability of getting a mental disorder. Any doubts still here? Anything that you would want to ask?